December 16, 1944, 5:30 a.m. The Ardennes forest, Belgium. Frost crystals glitter like diamond dust on the bare branches of oak and beech trees, their skeletal forms disappearing into a gray dawn mist that hangs between the rolling hills like funeral shrouds. The temperature hovers at -12 degrees Celsius, cold enough to turn breath into clouds and make metal burn flesh at the touch. Somewhere in the distance, a lone wolf howls, its voice cutting through the silence that has settled over this forgotten corner of the Western Front like a death mask. In hidden positions throughout the forest, German panzer crews sit in the warmth of their Tiger II. IIs and Panthers, their massive steel machines humming with the confidence of superior engineering. Obergefreiter Hans Müller adjusts the periscope of his Panzer IV, scanning the American lines through the morning gloom. Behind him, concealed beneath camouflage netting, stretch columns of German vehicles that represent the pinnacle of Reich engineering doctrine, complex, powerful, and built for domination. SDKFZ half-tracks, their tracks designed for optimal traction on the most challenging terrain. Kubelwagens with their sophisticated air-cooled engines. Opel Blitz trucks engineered to German precision standards. Each vehicle embodies years of meticulous development, theoretical perfection made manifest in steel and chrome. Müller permits himself a thin smile as he thinks of what lies ahead. Operation Wacht am Rhein, the final gamble that will split the Allied forces and prove German superiority once and for all. The Americans, he knows, rely on their ridiculous little utility vehicles. Jeeps, they call them. Tin cans on wheels that look more like children's toys than serious military equipment. He has seen captured examples, marveled at their primitive simplicity, their laughably light construction. How can such crude machinery possibly function in conditions like these? The very thought brings warmth to his chest, despite the bitter cold. When the offensive begins, those pathetic American vehicles will be the first casualties of winter itself, long before German guns have a chance to destroy them. The wireless crackles to life. Achtung! All units prepare for advance. Commence Operation Wacht am Rhein in 15 minutes. Müller's hands find the controls of his Panzer IV with practiced ease. Around him, the forest begins to stir as thousands of German soldiers prepare to emerge from their concealment. They carry with them not just weapons and ammunition, but an absolute certainty in the superiority of their equipment, their training, their engineering philosophy. The Americans, with their mass-produced mediocrity and their toy-like vehicles, are about to learn what real military machinery can accomplish. What none of them yet understand is that in a few short hours, their fundamental assumptions about military engineering will begin to crumble like ice under the relentless pressure of American pragmatism. The humble Jeep, that object of their derision, will prove to be far more than they ever imagined possible. To comprehend the magnitude of the shock that awaited German forces in the Ardennes, one must first understand the philosophical chasm that separated German and American approaches to military vehicle design. The contrast was not merely technical. It represented two fundamentally different worldviews about the nature of warfare, engineering, and the relationship between man and machine. German military doctrine, forged in the crucible of Prussian military tradition and refined through decades of theoretical development, emphasized the concept of qualitative superiority. Each vehicle, each weapon system, each piece of equipment represented an attempt to achieve technological perfection within its designated role. The Panzer IV, the Tiger, the various half-tracks and utility vehicles of the Wehrmacht, all embodied this philosophy of engineering excellence. German vehicles were complex, sophisticated, and theoretically superior to their Allied counterparts in almost every measurable category. Consider the Kubelwagen, Germany's primary light utility vehicle. Based on the Volkswagen Beetle chassis, it featured an air-cooled engine designed to operate in extreme temperatures, sophisticated independent suspension, and bodywork engineered to precise tolerances. Its development had taken years of careful research and testing. Every component had been optimized for performance, durability, and operational efficiency. German engineers took pride in such vehicles because they represented the triumph of scientific methodology over crude improvisation. American military philosophy approached vehicle design from an entirely different angle. Where Germans sought perfection, Americans pursued sufficiency. Where Germans emphasized complexity, Americans valued simplicity. The Jeep, officially designated the General Purpose Vehicle, or GPV, which soldiers corrupted into Jeep, embodied this pragmatic philosophy in its most concentrated form. The Jeep's development had been remarkably rapid by German standards. In 1940, the U.S. Army issued specifications for a lightweight reconnaissance vehicle that could carry 3 men and a machine gun across rough terrain. The requirements were basic: all-wheel drive, low silhouette, simple construction, easy maintenance. Bantam Car Company, Willys Overland, and Ford all submitted prototypes. Rather than engaging in years of theoretical development, the Army simply tested the vehicles under field conditions and selected the Willys design for its optimal balance of simplicity and capability. What emerged was a vehicle that German engineers would have dismissed. As primitive. The Jeep weighed only 2,160 pounds, less than half the weight of a Kugelwagen. Its 4-cylinder engine produced merely 60 horsepower. The suspension was basic leaf springs. The body was simple pressed steel with minimal creature comforts. By German engineering standards, it was crude, unsophisticated, and theoretically inferior in every category except one. It worked. The philosophical differences extended beyond mere technical specifications. German vehicles were designed by engineers for engineers, with the assumption that trained mechanics would maintain them, and skilled operators would use them according to precise protocols. American vehicles were designed for democratic armies, machines that could be operated and maintained by citizen soldiers with minimal training, vehicles that would continue functioning even when abused, neglected, or pushed far beyond their theoretical limits. By December 1944, more than 600,000 Jeeps had rolled off American production lines. They had proven themselves in North Africa, Sicily, Italy, and Normandy. Yet German intelligence assessments consistently underestimated their significance. Reports classified the Jeep as adequate for reconnaissance duties but unsuitable for sustained operations in challenging conditions. German officers who encountered captured Jeeps were struck by their apparent fragility, their lack of sophistication, their crude construction. How could such vehicles possibly compete with German engineering excellence? This question would be answered definitively in the forests of the Ardennes, where the collision between German theoretical superiority and American practical ingenuity would produce results that defied every expectation. German confidence in their vehicles' winter superiority was not merely arrogance, it was based on extensive experience and careful observation. Throughout the Russian campaigns, German vehicles had consistently outperformed their Soviet counterparts in extreme weather conditions. The careful engineering that went into German cooling systems, transmissions, and suspension components had proven its worth across thousands of miles of Eastern Front operations. As German forces prepared for the Ardennes offensive, their expectations regarding American vehicle performance were shaped by this experience. The coming winter would surely expose the fundamental inadequacies of mass-produced American machinery. Jeeps, with their lightweight construction and simple engines, would be the first casualties of the Belgian winter. Their crude suspension systems would fail on the rough terrain. Their basic electrical systems would succumb to moisture and cold. Their simple transmissions would prove inadequate for the demanding conditions of winter warfare. These expectations seemed entirely reasonable. The Jeep's specifications, analyzed through the lens of German engineering doctrine, suggested a vehicle barely adequate for summer reconnaissance duties, let alone the brutal demands of winter combat operations. How could a 2,160-pound vehicle with minimal ground clearance and basic suspension possibly traverse the deep snow and treacherous ice that would soon blanket the Ardennes? How could its simple four-cylinder engine generate sufficient power to maintain mobility in sub-zero temperatures? German vehicle crews looked forward to the coming offensive with particular anticipation. Finally, they would have the opportunity to demonstrate the superiority of their sophisticated machines over American mediocrity. The winter itself would be their ally, exposing the fundamental inadequacies of democratic engineering while proving the wisdom of German technical excellence. What German forces could not anticipate was that American engineers had approached the winter warfare problem from an entirely different angle. Rather than creating vehicles specifically designed for winter conditions, they had created vehicles designed to be adaptable to any conditions. The Jeep's simplicity was not a weakness, but a strength. A design philosophy that prioritized reliability and maintainability over theoretical perfection. The reality that would unfold in the Ardennes would shatter German preconceptions so completely that many would struggle to accept the evidence of their own eyes. The humble Jeep, that object of their derision, was about to demonstrate capabilities that would redefine German understanding of military engineering. The first German attacks launched at dawn on December 16th achieved complete tactical surprise. Along an 80-mile front, German forces emerged from their forest concealment like wolves from their dens, striking at thinly held American positions with overwhelming force. The initial success seemed to confirm every German expectation about American weakness and the superiority of Reich military engineering. But as the offensive developed and German forces advanced deeper into American positions, they began to encounter something that defied their understanding. Jeeps that continued functioning despite conditions that should have immobilized them. While German vehicles struggled with the increasingly treacherous terrain and plummeting temperatures, American Jeeps seemed to navigate the winter landscape with an almost supernatural resilience. Obergefreiter Müller, whose Panzer IV had advanced nearly 15 kilometers in the first day's fighting, witnessed his first demonstration of Jeep capability. During the afternoon of December 17th, his tank had taken up a position, overlooking a narrow valley road, when movement caught his attention through the periscope. An American convoy was attempting to withdraw under intense German pressure, but what he saw challenged every assumption he held about American vehicles. 3 Jeeps were pulling 105mm howitzers through snow that reached above their wheel wells. The vehicles should have been hopelessly mired, their lightweight construction and simple transmissions overwhelmed by the impossible demands being placed upon them. Instead, they moved with steady determination, their four-wheel drive systems providing traction that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Even more remarkably, they were maintaining this performance while under intermittent artillery fire, their crews displaying a casual competence that suggested such operations were routine rather than exceptional. Muller adjusted his periscope, convinced he was witnessing some sort of optical illusion. The mathematics made no sense. The Jeeps weighed barely a ton each, while the howitzers they were towing weighed nearly 2 tons. In these conditions, with this terrain, the feat should have been impossible. Yet, there they were, maintaining steady progress through snow that would have challenged vehicles twice their size. As the convoy passed through his field of observation, Muller noted other details that further confounded his expectations. The Jeeps showed no signs of mechanical stress, despite the enormous demands being placed upon them. Their engines maintained steady rhythm without the labored sounds that would indicate overheating or transmission failure. Their crews operated with the calm efficiency of men who had complete confidence in their equipment. Confidence that, according to German engineering doctrine, should have been entirely misplaced. What Muller was witnessing represented the collision between theoretical expectations and practical reality. The Jeep's performance in these conditions was not accidental, but the result of design decisions that German engineers had dismissed as primitive. The vehicle's lightweight construction, rather than being a weakness, provided optimal weight distribution for snow operations. Its simple four-wheel drive system, while less sophisticated than German equivalents, proved more reliable under extreme conditions. Most importantly, its basic mechanical systems continued functioning when more complex vehicles began to fail. The Jeep's winter performance was documented extensively in both American and German records. Technical Sergeant James Morrison of the 110th Infantry Regiment recorded in his diary, "The Jeeps keep going when everything else stops. We've pulled artillery through snowdrifts that buried the vehicles up to their windshields. The engines never quit. The transmission never fails. And somehow they always find traction." The Germans can't believe what they're seeing. German observations were equally detailed, though colored by disbelief. A captured Wehrmacht report dated December 19th noted, "American utility vehicles demonstrate capabilities that exceed theoretical parameters. Observed instances of vehicles weighing approximately 1 metric ton successfully towing artillery pieces over terrain, impassable to our own vehicles of superior specifications." Performance suggests either intelligence failure regarding actual vehicle capabilities or presence of unknown technical modifications. The intelligence failure was not technical but philosophical. German analysts had evaluated the Jeep according to German engineering principles, missing the fundamental difference in design philosophy. Where German vehicles were optimized for peak performance under ideal conditions, the Jeep was optimized for continued operation under the worst possible conditions. This distinction would prove decisive in the Ardennes winter. Statistical analysis from the Battle of the Bulge reveals the extent of Jeep reliability during winter operations. Of the approximately 15,000 Jeeps present with American forces at the beginning of the offensive, fewer than 300 were lost to mechanical failure during the entire 6-week campaign. This represented a mechanical reliability rate of 98%, far exceeding the performance of any other vehicle type on either side of the conflict. More significantly, Jeeps continued performing their primary mission, artillery mobility, throughout the campaign, despite conditions that immobilized thousands of other vehicles. American artillery units reported maintaining 85% mobility throughout the offensive, a figure directly attributable to Jeep performance. German forces, despite their sophisticated equipment and extensive winter warfare experience, achieved mobility rates of only 60% during the same period. The contrast became even more pronounced as the offensive progressed and winter conditions intensified. By December 22nd, temperatures had dropped to -20 degrees Celsius, with snow depths exceeding 1 meter in many areas. These were conditions that should have favored German vehicles, with their sophisticated heating systems and complex winter modifications. Instead, the advantage shifted decisively toward American forces, equipped with vehicles that simply refused to stop functioning. Captain Wilhelm Hoffmann of the 2nd Panzer Division recorded his growing frustration in a letter to his wife dated December 24th. "The Americans have vehicles that operate in conditions our engineers said were impossible. Their simple machines outperform our sophisticated equipment. We are learning that complexity can be weakness, that sophistication can become vulnerability. The Jeep has taught us a lesson we were not prepared to learn." This lesson extended far beyond mere technical specifications. German forces were witnessing the practical demonstration of a different engineering philosophy, one that prioritized function over form, reliability over sophistication, effectiveness over theoretical perfection. It was a philosophy that reflected broader American values: democratic, pragmatic, focused on results rather than elegant theories. Perhaps the most telling German observation came from Major Friedrich von dem Bach-Selewski, whose reconnaissance unit encountered an abandoned American supply depot on December 26th. Among the captured equipment were detailed maintenance, manuals for the Jeep, documents that revealed the true genius of American engineering philosophy. The manuals were written for mechanics with minimal training, illustrated with simple diagrams, and designed to enable field repairs using basic tools and common parts. The Americans have created a vehicle that any soldier can maintain, von dem Bach-Zelewski wrote in his after-action report. Their engineering philosophy assumes incompetence and designs around it. Our philosophy assumes competence and fails when that assumption proves false. In conditions where our sophisticated systems require expert maintenance they cannot receive, their simple systems continue functioning. We have been defeated by superior thinking disguised as inferior engineering. The transformation in German perception of American military engineering was neither immediate nor universal, but it was profound. Officers who had spent years dismissing American equipment as crude and unsophisticated found themselves forced to reconsider fundamental assumptions about the relationship between complexity and effectiveness. Obergefreiter Müller, whose Panzer IV had initially advanced with such confidence, found his worldview systematically challenged as the offensive stalled and then collapsed. By December 28th, his unit was in full retreat, struggling to maintain cohesion as German vehicles succumbed to mechanical failures brought on by extreme conditions and inadequate maintenance support. Meanwhile, American forces pursued them with a mobility that seemed to mock German engineering superiority. The psychological impact of this reversal cannot be overstated. German military doctrine was built upon the assumption of technological superiority, the belief that German engineering excellence would triumph over Allied quantity through superior quality. The Jeep's performance shattered this assumption completely. Here was an American vehicle that was not merely adequate, but superior to German equivalents in the most challenging conditions possible. German technical personnel began requesting captured Jeeps for detailed analysis, hoping to understand the secret of their remarkable performance. What they discovered challenged every principle of German engineering education. The Jeep's superiority lay not in sophisticated technology, but in the ruthless elimination of everything unnecessary. Every component served multiple functions. Every system was designed for field repair. Every specification prioritized reliability over performance. Hauptmann Ernst Bachmann, a veteran panzer commander whose Tiger I had been abandoned due to transmission failure, spent 3 days examining a captured Jeep before writing his analysis. This vehicle represents an engineering philosophy that is alien to German thinking. Where we seek to optimize performance through complexity, the Americans optimize reliability through simplicity. Where we design for ideal conditions, they design for the worst possible conditions. The result is a vehicle that performs adequately under all circumstances rather than superbly under optimal circumstances. The broader implications of this realization extended far beyond vehicle design. German officers began to recognize that they had fundamentally misunderstood the nature of American military capability. They had dismissed American equipment as inferior when it was actually designed according to different principles. Principles that, in the crucible of winter warfare, proved superior to German theoretical perfection. This transformation in perception occurred against the backdrop of military collapse. As German forces retreated through the Ardennes, pursued by American units that maintained their mobility through Jeep reliability, the symbolic significance of the humble utility vehicle became impossible to ignore. Here was American democracy made manifest in steel and rubber. Practical, reliable, effective, and utterly without pretension. The Jeep's performance in the Ardennes represented more than successful engineering. It embodied a fundamentally democratic approach to problem-solving. Where German vehicles required skilled technicians and perfect maintenance to achieve their theoretical potential, the Jeep was designed to function effectively in the hands of ordinary soldiers under extraordinary conditions. It was military equipment designed for a democratic army, reliable, maintainable, and forgiving of human error. General Wilhelm Bittrich, commander of the 2nd SS Panzer Corps, perhaps best summarized the German experience in his final report on the Ardennes offensive. We have been defeated not by superior technology, but by superior philosophy. The Americans have created weapons that reflect their values: democratic, practical, and effective. Their Jeep has proven more valuable than our Tigers, not because it is better engineered, but because it is engineered differently. We sought perfection and achieved complexity. They sought sufficiency and achieved reliability. In war, reliability defeats perfection every time. Throughout the Battle of the Bulge, as German forces struggled with increasingly unreliable equipment and American forces maintained their mobility through Jeep performance, the humble utility vehicle became a symbol of two competing worldviews. On one side stood German engineering excellence, sophisticated, complex, theoretically superior, but vulnerable to the imperfections of real-world conditions. On the other stood American pragmatism, simple, reliable, designed for the messy realities of democratic warfare. The Jeep's four wheels, spinning through the snow and ice of the Ardennes, carried more than artillery and supplies. They carried the weight of American industrial philosophy, the momentum of democratic values, and the promise that practical solutions would ultimately triumph over theoretical perfection. In the frozen forests of Belgium, a $1,000 utility vehicle had proven more valuable than million-dollar battle tanks, not through superior firepower, but through superior reliability. Every morning of the offensive, as German mechanics struggled to coax life from their sophisticated but failing vehicles, American Jeeps started with routine reliability. Every evening, as German forces counted their mechanical casualties, American units reported readiness rates that seemed to defy the laws of entropy. The contrast was not merely technical, but philosophical, a demonstration of what democratic engineering could accomplish when freed from the constraints of theoretical perfection. The Jeep's performance validated American confidence in mass production, standardization, and the wisdom of ordinary soldiers. It proved that equipment designed for democratic armies, simple enough for any soldier to maintain, reliable enough to function without expert care, effective enough to accomplish the mission, could outperform the most sophisticated products of authoritarian engineering doctrine. As German forces retreated through the snow-covered Ardennes, pursued by American units whose mobility seemed to mock every assumption about vehicle performance in winter conditions, the symbolic significance of the Jeep became undeniable. Here was American democracy in its most concentrated form: practical, reliable, effective, and utterly without pretension. A vehicle that succeeded not by being better than its mission required, but by being exactly what its mission demanded. The factual record of Jeep performance during the Battle of the Bulge reads like a technical impossibility. Between December 16, 1944, and January 28, 1945, American forces moved over 18,000 artillery pieces through some of the most challenging terrain and weather conditions in military history. Of these movements, approximately 85% were accomplished using Jeep traction, vehicles that, according to German calculations, should have been immobilized by conditions far less severe than those they actually encountered. The 101st Airborne Division's experience at Bastogne provides perhaps the most dramatic example of Jeep reliability under impossible conditions. Surrounded by German forces and cut off from normal supply lines, the division's artillery remained mobile and effective throughout the siege, largely because their Jeeps continued functioning despite ammunition shortages, fuel rationing, and maintenance facilities reduced to outdoor repair work in sub-zero temperatures. Lieutenant Colonel Harry Kinnard, the division's operations officer, documented the Jeeps' performance in his daily logs. December 22nd, Jeeps pulled artillery through 3 feet of snow to new positions. No mechanical failures. December 23rd, German attack repelled with artillery support. Jeeps repositioned guns 4 times during engagement. All vehicles operational. December 24th, resupplied by airdrop. Jeeps collected scattered supplies across 2-mile radius. Lost 1 vehicle to direct artillery hit. All others functional. December 25th, counter-battery fire mission. Jeeps displaced howitzers 800 meters through wooded terrain in 12 minutes. Germans could not adjust fire quickly enough to be effective. The German perspective on these operations reveals the extent of their bewilderment. Oberst Fritz Bayerlein, commander of the Panzer Lehr Division attacking Bastogne, recorded his frustration in increasingly desperate terms. The Americans move their artillery as if the vehicles weigh nothing. Our own vehicles require elaborate preparation for any movement. Theirs seem to relocate at will. We destroy their positions only to find them firing from new locations within minutes. Their mobility makes counter-battery fire impossible. How do vehicles so small move guns so large with such apparent ease? The answer lay in engineering decisions that German analysts had dismissed as primitive. The Jeep's four-wheel drive system, while mechanically simpler than German equivalents, distributed power more effectively across all four wheels. Its lightweight construction, rather than being a disadvantage, provided optimal weight-to-power ratio for snow operations. Most critically, its simple mechanical systems continued functioning when more sophisticated vehicles began to fail under the stress of extreme conditions. Technical Sergeant Robert Bowen of the 333rd Field Artillery Battalion provided detailed observations of Jeep performance that highlight the vehicle's remarkable capabilities. We were pulling 105mm howitzers through snow that came up to the Jeep's hood. The vehicles never slowed down, never strained, never showed any sign that they were working hard. The four-wheel drive just grabbed whatever traction was available and kept moving. I saw Jeeps pull artillery up hills that our trucks couldn't climb empty. I saw them ford streams that had German vehicles stuck on both banks. Most importantly, I never saw one quit running when we needed it. The statistical record supports these anecdotal observations. American artillery units reported average displacement, times of 8.3 minutes for towed howitzers during the Battle of the Bulge, a figure that German forces found impossible to match, despite having vehicles theoretically superior to the Jeep in every measurable category. German displacement times averaged 23.7 minutes for comparable artillery pieces, a difference that proved tactically decisive in numerous engagements. The Jeep's reliability extended beyond mere mobility to encompass the entire spectrum of winter operations. American forces used Jeeps for reconnaissance missions that German vehicles could not attempt, supply runs through terrain impassable to conventional trucks, and evacuation operations that required navigating paths barely wide enough for the vehicle's 62-inch wheelbase. In every role, the Jeep performed with a consistency that German forces found both impressive and infuriating. Captain Friedrich von Manteuffel of the 116th Panzer Division captured German frustration in a letter to his superior officer. "We attack American positions expecting to find troops immobilized by winter conditions. Instead, we encounter forces that move as easily as if conducting summer maneuvers. Their vehicles operate in conditions that strand our own equipment. Their artillery displaces faster than our advancing infantry can maintain contact. We are fighting an enemy whose mobility makes our tactical doctrine obsolete." The Jeep's performance was not merely a matter of mechanical superiority, but of systematic reliability. German vehicles, when functioning properly, often outperformed individual Jeeps in specific categories. German reconnaissance vehicles were faster on roads. German utility vehicles had greater payload capacity. German artillery tractors possessed superior theoretical towing capacity. But German vehicles achieved these advantages at the cost of complexity that made them vulnerable to the imperfections of combat conditions. American maintenance records from the Battle of the Bulge reveal the true genius of Jeep design philosophy. The average German vehicle required 2.7 hours of maintenance for every hour of operation during the offensive. The average Jeep required 0.3 hours of maintenance for every hour of operation, a nine-fold difference in maintenance requirements that translated directly into operational availability. Sergeant William Patterson, a mechanic with the 4th Armored Division, explained the practical implications. "German vehicles are like fine watches. Beautiful engineering, perfect when everything works, but fragile when something goes wrong. Jeeps are like hammers, simple, reliable, and nearly impossible to break. In combat, you want hammers, not watches. The Jeep gives you a vehicle that works every time you turn the key, hauls whatever you need hauled, and gets fixed with a screwdriver and some wire when something does go wrong." The psychological impact of Jeep reliability on German forces cannot be quantified, but it emerges clearly from captured documents and post-war interviews. German soldiers, conditioned to expect American equipment to fail under stress, found their assumptions systematically demolished by vehicles that simply refused to quit. The cognitive dissonance created by this experience undermined German confidence in their own equipment and, by extension, their faith in German technological superiority. Unteroffizier Klaus Weber of the 12th SS Panzer Division recorded his evolving perception in a diary recovered after the battle. December 17th. American vehicles are crude but functional. December 20th. American vehicles perform better than expected in difficult conditions. December 24th. American vehicles outperform our own equipment in winter operations. December 28th. American vehicles represent superior engineering philosophy. We have been wrong about everything. This transformation in perception occurred across all levels of German command. Field Marshal Walter Model, commanding Army Group B during the offensive, noted in his final report, "Enemy mobility exceeded all intelligence estimates." American vehicles demonstrated capabilities that our technical services had assessed as impossible. The failure was not merely tactical but conceptual. We did not understand what we were fighting against. The Jeep's success in the Ardennes fundamentally altered German understanding of American military capability. What had appeared to be crude improvisation revealed itself as sophisticated engineering designed according to different principles. What had seemed like democratic mediocrity proved to be democratic excellence adapted to the realities of modern warfare. The vehicle that German forces had mocked became the symbol of their defeat, not through superior firepower, but through superior reliability. In the frozen forests of the Ardennes, where winter seemed to mock human ambition and mechanical complexity became mechanical vulnerability, the humble Jeep wrote a new chapter in military engineering history. Its four wheels, churning through snow and ice with methodical determination, carried the promise that democratic values, pragmatism over theory, reliability over sophistication, effectiveness over elegance, would ultimately prevail in the struggle between competing worldviews. As the Battle of the Bulge drew to its inevitable close and German forces retreated toward their own borders, the transformation in their perception of American military capability was complete. The Jeep, that object of their initial derision, had become the symbol of American engineering excellence, not because it was theoretically perfect, but because it was practically invincible. In the crucible of winter warfare, simplicity had triumphed over complexity, reliability had defeated sophistication, and democratic engineering had proven superior to authoritarian alternatives. The lessons learned in the Ardennes would echo through the remaining months of the war and beyond. German technical personnel, when given the opportunity, requested detailed examination of captured Jeeps, hoping to understand the principles that made such remarkable performance possible. What they discovered challenged fundamental assumptions about engineering excellence and forced a complete reconsideration of design philosophy. The Jeep's victory in the Ardennes was not merely mechanical but philosophical. It validated the American approach to military engineering. Design for the worst conditions, not the best. Optimize for reliability, not performance. Create equipment that works for ordinary soldiers, not just expert operators. These principles, embodied in 2,160 pounds of steel and rubber, had proven more valuable than the most sophisticated products of German engineering doctrine. Today, more than 75 years after the Battle of the Bulge, the Jeep's tracks through the snow-covered forests of the Ardennes have long since disappeared. But the lesson they wrote in the frozen earth endures, that in the contest between competing philosophies of engineering and governance, between authoritarian perfection and democratic practicality, between theoretical superiority and reliable effectiveness, the simple truth often proves more powerful than the sophisticated lie. The Jeep succeeded in the Ardennes not because it was the best vehicle ever built, but because it was exactly the vehicle that democratic armies needed. reliable enough to function in any conditions, simple enough for any soldier to maintain, effective enough to accomplish the mission, and humble enough to serve without demanding attention or admiration. In a world that often mistakes complexity for sophistication and theory for truth, the Jeep's victory stands as testament to the enduring power of practical solutions applied with democratic determination. In the end, the Germans were right about one thing. The Jeep was different from their sophisticated vehicles. It was better. Not because it performed better under ideal conditions, but because it performed adequately under all conditions. It embodied the democratic promise that reliable sufficiency, multiplied across thousands of vehicles and millions of soldiers, would ultimately prove more powerful than authoritarian excellence concentrated in the hands of a few. The humble Jeep, pulling artillery through the Ardennes blizzard, carried within its simple mechanisms the weight of that promise and the proof of its truth. The snow has melted, the forests have regrown, and the battles have passed into history. But somewhere in those Belgian woodlands, if you listen carefully, you can still hear the sound of Jeep engines turning over reliably in the cold morning air, ready for whatever mission democracy might demand.